Good Shabbos. Hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. We are here in Parshat Pinchas, and we're looking at a text or two from Kedushat Levi, which is the central work of Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of Berdichev, who is one of the early great Hasidic rabbis. My understanding is that often Hasidic rabbis are only studied by their own specific Hasidic group, but that Kedushat Levi is one that is actually fairly universally studied across different Hasidic groups. But he was that early and important. So the verse that we're playing off of, Moses says, "Let Yud-He Vav-He, the God of the spirits of all flesh, appoint a man over the congregation." AB, would you like to give us some context on that?
Sure. So this is the transition of leadership from Moshe to Yehoshua, from Moses to Joshua.
Great. So, fairly straightforward line, right? God being the God of everything, give me a successor. Great. That, of course, would be the easy, obvious, literal meaning, but the Hasidic Rebbe is going to, of course, interpret this to mean something much different and rather mystical. So here we go. The verse instructs us to judge the people of Israel favorably, even if they are unable to do the will of the Creator at all times as angels do. This is so only because they are preoccupied with making a living. Okay. So at this point, it's probably not at all clear where he's getting that from.
It's not clear to me.
Yeah, but he's going to tell us. Um, so let's keep going. This is why Abraham, our father, a man of mercy who judged people favorably, gave food to the angels who came to visit him in Genesis, even though he knew that angels do not eat. He did so in order to teach the angels about human needs, in order that they not judge Israel harshly. This is
Okay.
why Moses said, "God of the spirits of all flesh," because a person is flesh and blood. He must labor for livelihood and therefore does not serve God consistently. So now we see how he got to that first paragraph from that line. When it said God of the spirits and all flesh, it's pointing out this corporeality that we as humans have that will sometimes get in the way of the service of the divine in a way that the angels don't have, right? They don't have to eat, they don't have other temptations, and therefore they can just serve God all the time.
Got it. Remind me again, because now I'm already forgetting. What was his first line again?
Oh, yeah. The verse instructs us to judge the people of Israel favorably, even if they are unable to do the will of the Creator at all times, as angels do. This is so only because they are preoccupied with making a living. Right, so we need to have compassion for each other because, it's important to remember and realize that people have their own needs. Right? I mean, he's talking specifically about religious service, but this can be, of course, with anything, right? Someone does something that upsets you, it is probably because they have some kind of internal need that is coming out in that way.
It's interesting that he's using a verse where it's Moses saying, "Let God." I mean, we'll see how he eventually will connect it back to the appointing of Joshua. Um, but you might expect that we should learn how to treat each other favorably, perhaps from something that God would say, or I don't know. It's just interesting that he's linking it from this is what Moses says about let God do the following.
As opposed to the typical language of the Bible would be more likely to say, God said, you people should treat each other favorably, or something.
Right. Yeah. So it's like a it's I mean this isn't new to us in terms of the mystical readings. They're always kind of finding some creative way in, but this is like a yeah. It feels like he's going out of his way. I don't know. We'll see how the last paragraph ties it together, but it's so far I'm still curious about why choosing this specific verse.
Or why choosing the whole verse? He could have made this entire, thus far, statement based off of just the God of the spirits of all flesh,
Hmm.
right? That would have been enough to get this. Why quote the whole verse?
Sure.
Okay. And this is why Moses said, let Yod He Vav He, the God of the spirits of all flesh, appoint. That is, appoint a judge and leader who will deal with Israel favorably, just as you do with a person who does not serve you consistently. Just as you are the God of the spirits of all flesh, and you judge Israel favorably, so shall you appoint a person over the congregation, a leader, who will also speak favorably of them.
Okay. Nice. Now it's starting to come together.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're imagining, right, that God, right. So I think the jumping off point for this teaching is that this is an interesting way for Moshe to refer to God, right?
Mm-hmm.
That Moshe could have just said, Moses spoke to the Lord saying, "Let the Lord appoint someone over the community."
Mm-hmm.
Why is it that Moses says, "Let the Lord, source of or the God, Lord God of the spirits of all flesh, appoint"? Um, and so then he's taking this additional verse or additional phrase of the verse and learning from it that this is actually teaching us something about us and our relationship to God, and then as a result, God's relationship to us, which then leads you to how you should judge other people. So this is very convoluted for one little verse.
Which feels like how uh, Levi Yitzchak tends to do.
It's. I mean, also we didn't have time for him to like, not pun intended, like flesh it out. He just kind of like boom, boom, boom. He just goes pretty quickly here.
Right.
Um,
Versus some of the other early rabbis that we sometimes read.
yeah,
Yeah. It's interesting. I wonder. I don't know how important this is, but I wonder the role that Moses sees in leadership at this point. Right. If this is what he's concerned about, he's not saying, appoint a military leader or appoint someone that is fair and balanced or somebody who's charismatic or whatever, or holy, right? Or wise. Specifically, what he's saying a leader needs to be, and in this specific case, the leader who is going to lead them into the promised land and into battle needs to be one who judges people favorably.
yeah. No, no, it's pretty dramatic in terms of you know the Levi Yitzchak's message that he's trying to teach here.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You would right. You'd ask someone who should be your leader. What give me the first few characteristics of the leader? So you would say someone who's a visionary, someone who can, I don't know, be inspiring, someone who I don't know. I mean, I imagine you would name other things. I don't know if you'd say in maybe even the top 5 or 10 that they view other people favorably.
Right.
You might say that they're open-hearted or maybe empathetic. I imagine. Okay, so maybe you'd have empathetic in the top 10.
But this is empathetic, but it's also slightly different than empathetic,
Yeah,
right? Because it's empathy with an extra lean towards like forgiveness
grace.
and whatnot.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's an interesting lesson in like if in this situation this is still what the proper leader is. Like, what does it say about a situation where we're selecting our leaders and we're not in that situation, right? When we're not needing someone to lead us into war and battle. Um, how different would the world be if this was the major qualification for all leaders?
Yeah. I'm where so I'm getting how he's taking this verse and this kind of interesting or different explanation of who God is in terms of being in the flesh of all people. So the flesh here for him means like kind of I mean, this is classic mysticism, is the flesh represents the worldly, the toil, the need to have to provide and create sustenance and all that. Where does he what is he doing with the word spirit or ruach here?
Yeah, that's a good question. It seems like at this moment he is doing nothing to me.
Spirits of all flesh are point that is a point and judge. So I think what he's trying to say here, um, is that human beings are unique in that we are both ruach and basar. We are spirit and we are flesh.
Right.
And so we are this kind of, unlike angel who's totally spirit, who's totally ruach. We human beings have both. You could say the blessing, but here he sees it more as like the challenge of being also fleshly, worldly. And we're going to have to. We're not going to always be able to worship God. We're not going to always be able to perhaps do quote unquote the right thing. Um, and so, just as God is aware that we're this kind of combination and nevertheless judges us, treats us favorably, so too the person that you're going to appoint over the congregation needs to realize that this is a good lesson here. The leader has to realize he or she is just like everyone else.
Hmm. Or that everyone else is just like them.
Sure, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Right. If it had said just God of all spirit, right, that would be saying, well, if, like, because we are spirit, we should always be completely, totally serving God, right? But no, God, it reminds me of when a kid does something wrong and a parent is like, do you see what your kid did? And they're like, what, my kid? Our kid.
Yeah.
Right. If God were just the God of our spirit, then like how could we, but no, God is the God of our spirit and our flesh, and therefore is understanding, as you have said.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's read the translator's commentary on this, and then do one more short one from Levi Yitzchak.
Great.
So this text
No problem.
represents.
They usually don't write so long.
Yeah, this time the commentary is about as long as the text itself. This text represents a central theme in the Berdichever's teachings. To be a spiritual leader means that one must be a compassionate guide who understands the challenges people face as embodied spiritual seekers. Embodied spiritual seekers. I like that phrase. Here, Moses, nearing the end of his tenure as the leader of Israel, and having struggled at various points with the misbehavior of his people, pleads with God to appoint a successor who will deal favorably with the community. In so doing, Moses points out that the ultimate model for this leadership style is none other than the divine. Judaism has always insisted on being a religion for householders who bear the responsibility of supporting themselves and their families. The Kedushat Levi, this Rebbe, living in the Ukraine, saw a surrounding civilization that had a strong monastic culture. As it happens, the Russian church especially venerated the story of Abraham and the angels as prefiguring the visitation. It is often depicted in icons. Could it be that there is a polemical touch to Levi Yitzchak's insistence that Abraham is teaching the angels about real humans and their needs? Interesting.
Nice. Um, I mean, I guess what I'm appreciating, I mean, the historical piece is interesting. I just don't know enough to offer anything
Right.
with that. So I'll just take it as it is. Um, what I appreciate about what this additional piece is adding for us is that it's Moses, right? I had first said this is just a weird verse to work with because it's Moses talking about God. So here it's like, no, it's specifically Moses because Moshe is saying, hey, I know how difficult it's been for me
Mm.
in leading this people. So when I'm going to appoint a successor with your help, God, let's make sure that this person gets a little bit more, is more favorable maybe than even I was.
Mm. Mm-hmm. Right. What is the one big piece of advice you would give me taking over your position after you retire? This is it.
Right. Yeah. Be a little bit kinder to the people.
Yeah. Don't hit the rock. Whatever you do. Um, yeah. This also this first paragraph of the commentary, I think, it also points out something about the nature and reputation of this specific Rebbe was that he was one that was just always overflowing with love and compassion, and he's viewed as protecting the people of Israel in prayer often. Right? They have all these tales of him, standing up and praying to God and telling God, no, 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 you have to save us, and just really putting that need over everything else.
Nice.
Yeah. Okay. So one thing that he often does, the Kedushat Levi in his book, is he'll look at a verse and he'll give an interpretation and he'll say, it means this. Or, and then he'll go into something completely different as a new interpretation. So here we see he's still interpreting that same verse, but even just that one, in this case, only that one phrase, the God of the spirits of all flesh.
Okay.
The essential longing of the human soul is for the service of God. It is only the body that longs for physical pleasures. In truth, both body and the soul are God's works, and just as God endowed the soul with the power for divine service, God could have endowed the body with the very same desire.
I think, this is just bringing up what I had brought up before about this interplay between body and soul, or body and spirit.
Right. So whereas his first interpretation was really only focused on the body, right, and the fact that the body does certain things, here he's okay. Let's look again at that full phrase: the soul's, the spirit of all flesh. On this basis, we have a claim against the Blessed Holy One to forgive us for our misdeeds. For the divine could have given the body the power to submit to God.
God, it's your fault. You wanted me to be a good person, and guess what? Today I've already messed up. Well, it's not my fault, God. It's your fault. I mean, that's a over hyperbolic explanation, but it's, hey, forgive me because God, you're the one who created me, and I'm unfortunately, have a body.
You're the one who made a cheeseburger taste so good, right? If you didn't want me to eat it, you shouldn't have made it so that I would enjoy it.
Yeah, or yeah, you're the one who made, um, you know, feeling defensive so natural.
What'd you say?
You're the one who made feeling defensive so natural. And I'm just,
Yeah, yeah.
just making it, other things that we naturally, Okay. Anyways, now the soul.
Um, right. Now the soul, which longs to serve God, is called spirit, as in the expression, the spirit of Yod He Vav He has spoken through me. And the body is called flesh. And this is the meaning of Moses' plea. Just as you are the God of the spirits, of those who long to serve you, also be the God of all flesh, that is, the body.
Mm.
Right. So now this is taking it completely out of the concept of leadership. Right. We're not talking about that anymore. We're just talking about this phrase and what it means for God to be the God of the spirit of all flesh. It almost feels to me like this one should go before the other, because this one is saying, this is kind of defining the term and saying, like, look, God, because you should be, like, this is the claim, you should understand where I'm coming from and why I do the things that I don't want to do or you don't want me to do or whatever else.
Right. What I it might be saying, and I'm only saying this because of our just study of these teachers, is
Mm-hmm.
that because I'm not sure I see it here, but maybe I want to see it here. Is that he's trying to invite you to plead with God to bring God into your life in the physical realm as well.
Mm-hmm.
God, I know that there is a spirit in me. There is a godly peace in me that is desirous of worshiping you and connecting to you and living a holy life. But what can I do? I live in this physical body and I have these desires and I'm a human. What I think he might be trying to say here, and this is like the Moses' plea part,
Mm-hmm.
as God, help me also turn this physicalness, this everydayness, this way that I stumble and fall and mess up, help me transform that into one of connection to you.
Interesting. That's not how I'm reading it, but I like it, and it definitely is in line with, early Hasidic writings.
Right. Right. Because that's what I'm saying. Just as you are the God of the spirits, of those who long to serve you, also be the God of the flesh.
Mm-hmm. Right. I think I'm reading it more, less of like, enable me to connect to you through the physical,
Mm-hmm.
as saying, you need to remember to connect to me through the physical. Right.
Right.
So if you were just the God of the spirit, then you would be looking at my spirit and the actions that I do and say, why did he do that?
Right.
There's no reason. Remember that you're also the God of flesh, and remember what flesh is and what flesh wants, and all of that struggle that is to be human, right? And approach that with compassion and understanding, and connect with me in that way too.
Right. And that works beautifully with the first teaching because that just shows the two are really interconnected.
Hmm.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right. What do they say?
Tales of Rabbi Levi Yitzchak's defense of the people Israel against human and celestial foes abound in the Hasidic tradition. Like Abraham, the psalmist, and Job, the Berdichever is described in these stories as being so bold as to challenge and chastise God when the Rebbe felt that heaven was not treating the people of Israel fairly. Interestingly, this text is one of the very few places in Rabbi Levi Yitzchak's own writings where he speaks of having a claim against God. Yeah, that word is very powerful in that. I mean, that's a big statement that you have a claim against God. We didn't really touch on that in our discussion.
Where
Um,
was that?
on this basis, we have a claim against the Blessed Holy One to forgive our misdeeds.
Oh yeah. I
Right?
mean, yeah, it's pretty radical.
It's not just, look, God, we make mistakes. Please forgive us. This is, I mean, to have a claim is saying, I have a valid argument against you, God. I have a valid gripe, perhaps,
Yeah.
which is a big statement.
Yeah.
Um, as in the previous text, the Berdichever uses this rhetorical device to elicit God's mercy. After all, if God wanted us to be purer or more spiritual beings, the Blessed Holy One could have made us so.
Yeah. I mean, I think what I appreciate, while the idea of that claim is so audacious, what I appreciate about it is that it then creates a sense of relationship between you and God.
Mm.
Just like I might ask things of God, then, or God might ask things of me, I can ask things of God, and that just sounds like a more it just sounds like a more normal relationship,
Mm. That's
or one that we
powerful.
might be more familiar with,
What were you gonna say?
or ones that you might be more familiar with.
Mm. Mm. That's powerful. I mean, I think most of us don't often think about having a relationship with God that is in that sense. Um, and what would it be like to feel that
Yeah.
if you are not one who does? Um, I had another different statement from yours that was about that, but I was enjoying yours so much I forgot it. How did you start that comment?
I was saying that he was being very audacious and saying that we have a claim
Uh huh.
against God, and then concluding that by saying it really then speaks to the way that the relationship between you and God is.
Mm. Yes, thank you. And I was gonna to add also, it also I think is an important message to the individual, um, right? Because just as I mean, we've talked about it in several ways, right? Just as God has compassion upon you because of your inherent, natural instinctive flaws, or instincts that lead to flaws, or whatever, and we should view others. This also adds you should view yourself in that same way, right? Because many of us have a tendency to beat ourselves up for whatever mistakes that we make, and really do psychological and emotional damage to ourselves by dwelling on those things. And this teaching can be taken to that look, remind yourself that you are human, and just as anyone else might have something behind them that's making them do something that they wouldn't want to do or that you wouldn't want them to do, that's going to happen with you. And like that's okay because that's normal. And it can, I can imagine that being very liberating, particularly in a aspect of our tradition that might seem. It often feels to me that certain uh, traditions within Judaism could really lend itself to like a very serious sense of like guilt and responsibility and all kinds of other psychological issues coming about. And this could serve to kind of counteract that a little.
Nice.
All right.
All right. Yasher
Alrighty.
Koach.
Any last thoughts?
No, no, it's good.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you to everybody that tuned in, and have a good Shabbos. Yasher Koach, and we hope to see you soon.